Good afternoon, and thank you for attending today's press conference. Today we're going to be sharing some more comments about the tragedies we've witnessed at LaSalle Veterans Home, and also more than just LaSalle, but throughout all of our Illinois Veterans Home. Although we had a large isolated incident at LaSalle, it did affect veterans at other veterans homes. So once again, I want to thank you for being here. And it's great to see some familiar faces, to see that you are tracking and following along with what we have going on with us. So thank you for being here again today. For those of you new, I'm Representative Dan Swanson, and my hometown is Alpha, Illinois. I represent the 74th District, which includes Mercer County and some or most of Knox, Henry, Bureau, and Lee counties. As both a veteran of the U.S. Army, Army National Guard, and former superintendent of the Henry County Veterans Assistance Commission, caring for our veterans is one of our most important charges we have in public service. Throughout each of these press conferences we have had about the issues in our veterans home with COVID, I've shared a story about visiting the Quincy Veterans Home in December 2017 in the midst of a Legionnaires outbreak that ended up taking 13 of our hometown heroes there. I've shared this story each time because specific lessons were learned in the response to that outbreak by the very people who ended up leading IDVA during this tragic outbreak of COVID. They heard the same things I heard at Quincy. They knew how we could apply lessons learned for future outbreaks. And in fact, they said the same thing we are saying now. How can we learn from mistakes here and prevent them in the future? The problem, unfortunately, is those leaders, former Director Chaplavia, Deputy Governor Sol Flores, and other members of Governor Pritzker's administration only seemingly gave lip service to these issues and did not absorb the lessons learned from Quincy and previous audits in order to do their jobs in protecting our hometown heroes. Beyond the facility level problems, though, which are frankly inexcusable, it's clear to me the veterans' homes were being managed remotely via Zoom and conference calls with insufficient follow-up protocols to ensure employees were actually following through on proper public health protocols and not just saying they were. This was a failure of the Pritzker administration to manage their employees and ensure compliance of his own Illinois executive orders and CDC guidance. Their negligence in doing so led to dozens and dozens of deaths due to this failure to manage and failure to follow pandemic operating procedures throughout all of our Illinois veterans' homes. Each one of the hearings we've had, we've been able to peel back another, more rotten layer to this management. As we continue to ask questions important to the families of the hometown hero victims of this negligence, we must continue to ask who knew what and when in order to construct a full timeline of culpability for those involved. Before I move on, I just want to mention with me today are many of the veterans from within the Illinois Republican Caucus. Also with me, you'll hear from Patrick Windhorst, who has a veterans home in his district, Randy Freese, who has the Quincy home in his district, who has been on the Veterans Committee hearings throughout the whole pandemic, and also David Welter, who too has also been on the pandemics. But I'm going to turn it over now to Representative Dr. Jacobs, a veteran himself, who has a few words to share. Dr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. Thank you. My name is Dr. Paul Jacobs. I'm from the 115th District, which is down in Carbondale and everywhere. We are in part of Union, Jackson, Jefferson, Washington, and Perry counties. I go back to 1966. My experience was in the military was as a member of the Navy. I was at sea on a very old World War II carrier, the USS Boxer. Maybe someone has heard of it. While on board, you know, we loaded thousands of Marines on board that ship to train for helicopter assault in Vietnam. During 1966 and 67, when I was on board there, these Marines that came on board knew exactly what was in store. You know, to me, they were all heroes. I can't say that too much. It took our whole ship, countless training helicopters and pilots to support this effort. These Marines put their lives on the line for us and our freedom. Once in Vietnam, the casualty rate was as high as 70% in just 6 weeks. Excuse me. This is not good to be here. All of us had a job to do on that team, and all jobs are important. I think all of us who trained and supported these men have a profound respect for them. All of us here, veterans or not veterans, appreciate the Navy corpsmen, the Army medics, the Marines, the soldiers. They were all put in harm's way. Their sacrifice, the sacrifice of Illinois veterans and all the veterans, obligates us to provide them with the highest level of care. We have seen the opposite of that as we've learned what happened at the veterans' homes in the state. 76 veterans have died. Our veterans deserve better. They have a right to be cared for and protected, just as they have historically cared for us and protected us. The administration needs to get this mess straightened out. I am proud to be here today. I'm not happy to be here today. I'm proud to be here today to demand better and to join my fellow Republicans and veterans. Thank you for Representative Swanson for introducing me and putting this all together. I look forward to working together with him and all the members of the General Assembly to demand better care and more accountability for the heroes that put their lives on the line for us all the time, every day. Thank you. Mike Murphy is next.
Thank you, Representative Swanson and Jacobs, for your remarks. And good morning. Thanks, everyone, being here. My name is Mike Murphy. I'm state rep in the 99th District, which covers half of Springfield and 8 communities in Sangamon County. Like many of my colleagues who spoke already and many who will follow me, I'm a veteran. I served in the United States Army from 1973 to 1976. My last year was in the Republic of South Korea. I've been a member of the American Legion since my discharge, and I'm a lifelong member of the VFW. But when I talk about veterans in my family, I talk about my mom and dad. They were part of the greatest generation. They met in Pearl Harbor. They both joined soon after the attack. My father had to wait a little bit because his mother wouldn't let him sign up when he was 16. They met. They were married in Pearl Harbor. And when I think about some of their colleagues whose life ended the way it did, it's just tragic. I was inspired to serve by my parents. They stepped up to the call during World War II, and like so many others. Had it not been for World War II in the service, I wouldn't be here right now. They wouldn't have met. So when I think about the ideals of military service, duty, honor, placing the needs of protection of your fellow Americans before your own, these are more than just words. It was instilled in me from a young age, and I experienced it during my time in the military. Each veteran stepped up to the call to protect their fellow Americans. It's deeply troubling when we fail to protect them as they thought to protect us. We have failed too many times, and we must ensure we are not here again in another year because of the administration failures to protect those who have stepped up to protect us. That's the least we can do. I will now turn it over to Representative Mark Lutt.
Thank you and good afternoon. Thank you for having me here. My name is Mark Lutt. I'm State Representative for the 91st District. My hometown is Pekin, Illinois, and I serve portions of Peoria, Tazewell, and Fulton County. And I was a proud member of the Army Reserves from 1987 to 94. Compared to the gentleman behind me, I served in a very small capacity. So I appreciate all of you for what you did compared to what seems small to me as to what they did. Like many who have served, I enlisted because I wanted to serve my country. From the time I was a little kid, I listened to stories from relatives, my grandfather, many uncles, cousins. Recently had a cousin retire as a major who is still overseas working for the benefit of this country, and that drove me to enlist to contribute what I could. My grandfather and those relatives paved the way for me. When I think about these heroes, Residing in our state veteran homes, I can't help but think of my own family and how angry I would be to watch them go through what has happened in these veterans' homes, LaSalle, and all the state homes. To the families of those who have lost their lives, I'm sorry you've had to go through this more deeply than I can express. These people living in these homes have bravely sacrificed in service to our nation. We're here living the way we do because of them, and that should never be forgotten. This kind of treatment should have never existed. We will never be able to fully repay them for what they have done, but it's our duty to try to ensure that the final years they have here, that they are cared for, not ignored, not mistreated, and certainly not forgotten. Cared for. We must get to the bottom of what has transpired at our veterans' homes and make sure that this never happens again. And I'm confident in the gentleman standing behind me that they are driven and will do everything possible to help structure an environment to make sure that this never does happen again. And I will stand next to them the whole way. Thank you to everyone who has served in the U.S. Armed Forces. I salute all of you, and I honor you. Now I would like to turn it over to Representative Welter.
Thank you, Representative Loft. And those of you who I serve within the General Assembly and who have served our nation, I thank you for your service. We owe you a debt of gratitude. My name is David Welter, and I represent the 75th District here in the Illinois House. My hometown is Morris. I have the awesome responsibility of representing part of LaSalle County, not the actual part that LaSalle home is in. However, just as I've stated at these press conferences and in the hearings that have been conducted in the House, I know of folks who work in this home, and I also know of folks who have their loved ones in this home, specifically a co-worker of mine outside the General Assembly. Her father is in this home. So as I've again talked about in committee, this is very personal to me and many folks in my area as well. I can say as the tragedy was unfolding in LaSalle, I would get daily reports from my coworker and the frustration that her and her mother were having regarding her father and the communication that they're receiving from the LaSalle home. So with that, I had started to sound the alarms along with Senator Rezin, asking the Pritzker administration to please do anything that they could in their power to help protect our veterans. Unfortunately, through these hearings, we found out that our pleas went on for too long before somebody took action. I want to remind folks that 18 months prior to the tragedy that unfolded at LaSalle, Governor Pritzker was presented with a health and safety audit report for the Illinois Veterans Homes conducted by Terra Tech, one of the most respected consulting firms. The audit collected and reviewed over 250 protocols, policies, and procedures at our 4 state-run veterans homes with a focus on health, safety, and public health emergencies, and water management programs in the wake of the Legionnaires' outbreak that had occurred at the Quincy home. The audit identified 16 weaknesses prevalent across the Illinois veterans homes and issued 22 specific recommendations to address them in order to ensure the health and safety of the residents, employees, and visitors. Unfortunately, these recommendations were largely not acted upon by this administration, demonstrating a lack of leadership on the part of the former director, Chapelavia, in the critical months leading up to the COVID-19 outbreak at the LaSalle home. How could the governor and his team have allowed this to happen, knowing that our veterans were at risk prior to this pandemic? The question will continue to haunt the families of the heroes that we lost at the LaSalle home and our other veterans' homes across the state. House Republicans will continue our efforts to hold this administration accountable on their failure to protect our veterans and the state's care. And most importantly, we will not rest until sweeping changes are made at the states to prevent these future outbreaks and to actually finally implement these policies. The policies in the terror report, the recommendations that came out after the Auditor General from the Quincy home, these are things that we have had for many months prior to this pandemic even taking place, and this administration and their leadership has failed to implement them, and they need an answer for the families that have lost their loved ones. And after hearing, we are not getting that. We need additional hearings because there are still several questions out there that need to be resolved. Thank you. Now I will call up Representative Dan Calkins.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Dan Calkins from Decatur. I serve the 101st House District. I get part of Macon County, all of DeWitt County, all of Piatt County. I get the southeastern part of McLean County and the southwestern part of Champaign County. Lives lost in our veterans' homes affect me not only as a citizen, but as a fellow veteran. I served over 22 years in the military. I've been an infantryman, I've been a platoon leader, I've been a company commander, and I've been a staff officer. The first responsibility of a leader is to protect those under his command. The most important hire is to put qualified people in place to make sure that your soldiers are properly cared for. When disaster strikes, a real leader takes responsibility and shares lessons learned with his or her community. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak at the Illinois Veterans Homes, all we have heard from the Pritzker Administration is excuse after excuse and zero action to protect the lives of those who served our country. I don't know how those involved can sleep at night knowing their lack of action may have caused dozens of people to die, and now a failure to acknowledge the true problems could lead to more deaths in the future. Now, you may think that this is a little harsh, this criticism is a little harsh, but let me assure you, I've spent 30 years in the long-term care industry as both an owner and an operator. I know firsthand the resources and the power that the state of Illinois has in this area. And I guarantee you, the state can and does get involved immediately in a facility where they have these kinds of issues. The lack of attention paid to our veterans' homes is inexcusable. This has been a colossal failure of leadership and the use of resources by the Pritzker administration. They must face up to their failures. They must report back what their plan of action is, and we certainly intend to hold them to that standard. I'll be followed by Representative Freese.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon. Thank you for indulging us today. I am State Representative Randy Freese. I represent the 94th District, which includes the town of Quincy, Illinois, where the longest serving and largest veterans home is located at the Quincy Veterans Home facility. And another thing, I'd just like to point out that although I'm not a veteran, part of what drives me is that my brother, Michael Albert Freese, was killed in action in Vietnam, member of the United States Army. It's a very, very strong motivating factor of why I stand here and serve on the Veterans Committee and stand here and demand answers to these questions. First of all, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee on both sides of the aisle for last week's subject matter hearing on the tragedy that occurred in LaSalle. It was enlightening and it was long overdue. It's clear that the IDHS Inspector General is absolutely right in calling the LaSalle Veterans Home Management response to the COVID outbreak as inefficient, reactive, and chaotic. They deserve better. As a result, 36 families who entrusted their loved one to the state care are grieving. We cannot bring back those who we have lost, but we can and we must make sure this type of tragedy never happens again at a veterans home facility in the state of Illinois. We need Governor Pritzker to say, the buck stops here. We need him to work with us to reform the leadership structure that governs our veterans' homes and to make sure that clear preventative policies are in place for all of our veterans' homes. In short, we must have a good plan. We must have someone who is personally accountable for making sure that that plan is being implemented at all of the veterans' homes. As was demonstrated in last week's hearing, this is not a partisan political issue. The governor and the IDVA must take seriously our solemn responsibility to meet and exceed state standards for care at every veteran's home under the jurisdiction of the state of Illinois. Thank you for your time, and now have Representative Wilhauer.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you guys for being here today to discuss and report on and hopefully provide some accountability on this really important issue. I'm State Representative Blaine Wilhauer, 107th District, South Central Illinois, Fayette, Effingham, Bond, Marion, and Clinton counties. And you know, when I was growing up, I always envisioned myself as a military person. It's just something that I always desired to do. And between my junior and senior year in high school, I spent that summer and a little bit more down at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, in basic training. And you know, something that really had a profound impact on my life. And I served for 6 years as a Army intelligence analyst, and served in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. So obviously, this this issue is something that's near and dear to my heart. And you know, all of these other folks up here too, I want to thank them for their service, both in their capacities on accountability here in state government for our veterans, and you know, especially for serving. You know, what we have seen here is a wholesale failure all the way around, from the you know, Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs, IDPH, and you know, especially the governor. They literally failed to act to protect our most vulnerable people, and dozens of veterans are dead. You know, these are people who've been downrange for us. They've risked theirself, they've sacrificed. And you know, is this really the thanks that they get, the respect that they get in the state of Illinois? I'm completely disgusted and almost at a lack of words about this. But you know, it's disgusting, but it's not. When we look back at the past year plus, it's not real surprising. This administration has stubbornly and steadfastly refused to employ any sort of targeted protection strategy. And you know, people have died because this administration was more concerned with using their resources to do things like, you know, test and contact trace teenagers, instead of focusing on the people that we know without a doubt are vulnerable, statistically vulnerable to critical illness and death. You know, there's never been a strategy on same-day testing in areas like these veteran homes and any long-term care facility where we know we have high community spread. And to my knowledge, there's really still not today as we stand here. You know, and that's really inexcusable, because I look back on this stuff that, you know, a lot of us have been talking about this for a year. You know, last May, a year ago, the state of Florida, they rolled out a mobile testing unit that could turn around tests in 45 minutes. That was specifically deployed to these areas, like these veteran homes, like these long-term care facilities, where we knew people were vulnerable. These people, they could turn around 3,500 tests in a week. You know, so the ability was always there. The ability was always there. It was the will from this administration, and that's you know, to say that is a tragedy would be a huge understatement. You know, protecting our most vulnerable has never been the top priority here. These folks deserve better. Our system completely failed them, and you know, as representatives in this state, you know, I profoundly apologize for what has happened to the veterans under this leadership in this state. These families deserve better. They deserve a full transparency on this, and they deserve full accountability on this. It's the very least that we can do at this point. And I'd like to turn it over to Representative Windhorst.
Thank you, Blaine. Before I begin, I'd like to thank the veterans who are here for your service to our country. It means a lot to all of us here that you would put your lives on the line for us, and we honor you for that service. I'm Patrick Windhorst, State Representative for the 118th District. That is all or parts of the southernmost 11 counties of our state. I'm a former prosecutor. I'm also a member of the House Judiciary Criminal Law Committee. I'm also proud to share part of Union County with my fellow Representative Paul Jacobs, who is here today with us. We represent the veterans and family members of those veterans in the care of the state of Illinois at the Anna Veterans Home in Union County. I want to echo the call Leader Durkin made last week, asking for a criminal investigation into the deadly COVID-19 outbreak that claimed the lives of 36 veterans living in the care of the state of Illinois at the LaSalle Veterans Home. I believe the recent investigation and report made public by the Inspector General details the administration's response and lack of response to the COVID-19 outbreak at LaSalle and raises enough questions to trigger that investigation. I respect greatly the men and women that serve on the front lines of our healthcare industry and realize that the COVID-19 pandemic created a slew of new, intense, and ever-changing rules and regulations. Our call for an investigation stems directly from the failure of leadership, management, and oversight from the Pritzker Administration involving the state's response to COVID-19 outbreaks that have resulted in 36 deaths and scores of staff and residents testing positive for COVID-19. An investigation by law enforcement needs to be initiated to find out if there are criminal liabilities that exist in the lack of preparation for or lack of adequate response to the COVID-19 outbreak at LaSalle, and to answer the questions raised by the OIG report and many more questions like them.